Excellent. So thank you for taking the time today. We're starting a smarter remote working webinar today, and we thank you for their time. Orchid are an integral independent software vendor in the Sage landscape, providing solutions in areas that add value to Sage 300 every day. They are a valued and trusted ISV in business partner circles, and we often seek their guidance and solutions to help provide our clients with a complete solution. The other day I sat in on their webinar about remote working from home, and I was so impressed with how fast they put together a solution and case studies and really targeted the key areas impacting us all as we are forced to work differently during these past few months. It dawned on me that Orchid could only deploy this fast and professionally if this was something they were already doing, and I came off the session completely mind blown with new ideas on things I'd not thought of. So today I wanted to introduce you to Anne, Natalie and David from Orchid Systems, who will be presenting. So over to you guys. I'm just going to hand over to Nat. Oops. Okay.
Thanks, Stacey.
Thanks, Nat.
Okay, so as Stacey, can you all see my screen? All good?
We can.
As Stacey mentioned, in April we started this series on remote work, and we've presented that in different ways over the last few months. So this one is a new version for those of you who might have seen part of it. So it's still working around, how to use Sage 300 and Orchid modules for smarter remote work, but it's a slightly different presentation from what you have seen before, Stacey, and also incorporate some new module that will be released in the next couple of weeks.
Great.
And it's really all about exploring the depth of Sage 300 combined with the flexibility provided by Orchid modules to help business work remotely and build resilience in these volatile times. So my name is Natalie, and I've got Anne and David on the line as well. So we will be switching between the presentation and the live demo a couple of times. But just before we start, for those of you who may not be familiar with Orchid, a few key facts and why that's relevant to you. We are Sage 300 development partner, focusing exclusively on Sage 300. And at the moment, we have over 5,000 sites, so end users, companies using Sage 300 in over 60 countries. And on average, they run 2 of our modules per site, and supported by over 400 Sage business partners like Aptus around the world. We're based in Sydney, Australia, and over the years, we have won quite a few industry awards from Sage, recognizing the value that our 13 integrated modules have contributed to the Sage landscape. And by integrated, we mean that they're all developed in a Sage 300 SDK, software development kit, meaning that they look and feel like a Sage 300 module, and they rely on the Sage 300 utilities. And we've been in business for over 25 years. A couple of key facts. What's important to us is, we used to be a Sage 300 consultant as well, so we understand that it's really important to address support cases quickly and as thoroughly as possible, and to be there in the long term, because we know that once you commit to a solution, you are generally going to use it for a while. And most of the products that we work on focus on improving efficiency and productivity. And like Stacey mentioned, while the focus of this is how it helps with remote work, a lot of these solutions are not necessarily new. We have been working with them for a while, but we're presenting them in a way that focuses on going paperless and working remotely and improving collaboration. So those 13 modules are grouped in those broad 5 solutions and category, starting with collaboration and business intelligence. We will spend a fair bit of time on that today, because obviously that's particularly critical at times of working remotely. So we will demonstrate document management, link, notes, and touching a little bit of Info Explorer and Email Smart Link. The next grouping is around automation and productivity with Process Scheduler, which lets you automate some tasks in Sage 300, and Report Runner, which is about running Sage 300 Crystal reports and Sage 300 GL financial reports through Sage. And again, we will demonstrate those today. In the tailoring and integration category, we will focus on Extender, which is a module that lets you configure Sage 300 without customization, and also customize Sage 300 and develop new processes in Sage 300 using a language called Python. So we will demonstrate how that's used in our various scenarios. Streamlining financial processes is around EFT processing, which many of you are probably familiar with, as well as inter-entity trade and inter-entity transactions to automate loan account and transaction entries between companies trading with each other. So we will touch on EFT processing today, but will not really cover inter-entity. And on the operations and inventory management, which is not part of today's webinar, we have return material authorizations, bin tracking, and freight SmartLink, and you can find some more information on that separately. So to introduce these various modules, we work through Orca Oz Enterprises, which is an Unreal company selling office furniture and lights that has been using Sage 300 and Orchid add-ons for a long time to solve everyday business problems. And in this presentation, we explore how they use the various modules to support remote work. And this is the team that we're going to use in our scenario: Steve, the CFO, and the sales executive, Natalie, the sales manager, Charlotte's the vendor, Sue is the office manager, David, our marketing manager, and Nikki and Emma are both customers. So today we will demonstrate 3 scenarios across different functional areas of the business and see how they support those 4 key groups of stakeholders. So we will show how the AP team can go paperless using document management link, extend a workflow for approvals, including remote access, which is the ability to approve records without logging to Sage 300 in a cloud-based website, and EFT processing to pay vendors. We will look at, on the customer engagement side, how we can support customer-facing employees with better information using notes, document management link, and automated processes with Extender. And on the finance management side, we will look at a range of alerts and analysis using Extender, Info Explorer, Report Runner, and how we can automate some of these processes using Process Scheduler. And overall, we try and demonstrate how these add-ons comfort the senior team that the investment in technology can add value to their business in a cost-effective manner. So our first scenario is going paperless in the accounts payable team. And whether you're a vendor or a customer dealing with Orca, generally means dealing with Sue. She wears many hats, including looking after Orca's accounts receivable, accounts payable, and payroll. In addition to juggling so many hats, Sue also used to file lots of paper and emails to get approvals. So now, using Orchid add-ons, document management link, and Extender in particular, she can enter invoices and file supporting documents in Sage, and Steve can approve with all the required documents without any printed documents. So the scenario we're now going to look at live in Sage 300 is where Sue enters invoices in accounts payable and files all the supporting documents in document management link. Those documents can be scanned images, PDFs of receipts, emails, invoices downloaded from various website portals. When that invoice batch is made ready to post, the approval workflow starts, and Steve will then receive an email so that he can approve either in Sage 300 on the console or through that remote link. And we will then look at this remote access link, which is a new offering that we will be launching in the next couple of weeks. Then, once this is approved, Sue can create an AP payment batch, and at that point, the documents that were attached against the invoices are still available in Sage 300 and can be looked at while the payment batch is created. And from there, we can also go and create an EFT file and send all that the file to the bank and email the remittance advice. All that without having to print any documents or go to the post office to mail the remittance advice, etc. So now I'm going to hand over to Anne to do the demonstration. So Stacey, if you can make Anne the presenter, that would be great.
Excellent. We can see your screen, Anne.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Stacey. And thanks for the intro, Natalie. My name's Anne from Orchid Systems, and I'm going to do a bit of role playing and show you that scenario that Natalie has just described. So I'm currently logged into my Sage 300 as Susan, and I have previously keyed this AP payment batch. So for one invoice to Charlotte, Charlotte's web work, and a second invoice for the new icons that we needed for the website. You can see this box down the left-hand side here, sorry, the right-hand side here. So what Document Management Link allows you to do is to configure either a SharePoint library or a network folder or a map drive like Dropbox, Google Drive, one of those, to store information associated with a Sage 300 master file record and or transaction record. So here in this box, I'm seeing all the invoices that I've had previously for vendor 1200. And this particular invoice I have not yet filed away. So you can file away in multiple ways. If you have your invoice in email, what you can do is drag the invoice, the PDF, for example, out of your email and file it away. And that will pop that document, renumber it according to the document number that's on your AP invoice entry screen, and pop it in the appropriate place, whether that's your SharePoint library or your map drive or your network folder. But you can also file away the entire invoice if you wanted. So we could just drag that in too. So if you wanted to associate the MSG file as well, because there's something in the invoice that you want to keep, as well as the PDF invoice, you can do that. And you can also attach the file. So if I go to the second invoice where I don't have an attachment yet, by using the Add or Explore button to add a document. So if I was working in the scenario where I had multiple documents stored away in my scan folder, I could browse to that particular folder, which is going to take too long. So I'll just take anything from here and add in that document. And it has been geared to renumber the file based on what has been entered as the document number in the Sage 300 invoice entry screen. So if I was happy with the, with my attachments, and now I'm ready to post this batch, but I know that the batch total is higher than I'm allowed to approve and post. So when I make it ready to post, or when I try and post the batch, Extender Workflows is automatically going to kick in and notify whoever needs notification for this particular invoice. And in my case, because the batch total is less than 40,000, it only needs to go to one person who's in the finance manager group. So Sue knows, she's done her work, attached her documents, and anyone in the finance manager group has been notified via email, and they can then come and approve that batch. So just to show you what's happened and what would be available for somebody logging in, Sue, because she has access to the workflow console and because she can view everyone's entry, she can see her AP invoice batch sitting here, just being submitted by Susan, waiting on the finance manager group, batch number 98. If she tried to accept and post this, because she is allowed to post some batches which are less than 10,000, she would get an error message that it's waiting on the finance manager group, and she can't actually post that. So I'm just going to log in as Steve. And Steve, when he goes in and looks at his workflow console, as you'd expect, if he was viewing only those records that are assigned to me or a group I'm in, he sees the AP invoice batch submitted by Susan and the batch number 98. And if he drills down into that batch, he will then see the batch as well as the documents. So he can preview these documents, double click to open them up. So as part of his approval, he could double click and open up those particular documents. And that obviously can be done because he's got remote access to the server. But if he wasn't logged in to Sage at that time, then, and here I just need to pull my emails. And I've got lots of different email boxes, so it takes a bit of time. But Steve's email, he will be receiving also a notification via email that he's got approvals to make. So it's come in now. So if we look at this particular one, he can see, he's receiving this email because he's part of the finance manager group. The company that sent him this email, the invoice batch total, and a comment to say, if this had been more than 40,000, the batch total, it would have first been sent to somebody in the AP approver group, David, for example, for first approval before it comes to Steve, but because it's less than 40,000, it's come straight to Steve. He doesn't need, this particular batch doesn't need 2 levels of approval. And if he was in the office, he could click on this and it opens up the console, which I've just shown you, and he can drill into the transaction, the batch, and see the attached documents. But if he's not in the office, he can click on this forms, and that takes him to a website for which shows pretty much the same information as what he saw in his email. He can see what the batch number is, the batch total is, and any information that can be included in the email can also be included on the form, and the form can prompt for comments. So if he needs to fill in a comment, the comment can be mandatory or not, and when he goes ahead and approves or rejects, then that information is sitting on the website, and Process Scheduler, which is one of our modules which can repeatedly run tasks, would be running in the background, and every 5 minutes or so, or half an hour, or however frequently you want to check the website, it would pull down any approvals or rejections. So just so we don't have to wait half an hour for that to happen, either I can click here because I've configured it that way, or to show you through Process Scheduler, we have a schedule called Remote Access, which runs an extender script, which just polls that website. So this would happen in the background, and I'm just going to run it now. And if you watch closely, you'll actually see the posting flicking up, which if you're familiar with accounts payable posting, that was actually the screens from accounts payable flicking up and posting the batch, because our workflow has said that once the AP payment batch is approved through workflow, that the action actually posts the batch. So that batch is now posted, and if we go back to our invoice batch, we can see it's now been posted, and Sue would have received an email notifying her that the batch has been approved and posted. So if we go back to email and look at Sue's emails, so we now get the email alerting her that it's been they're ready to post, and the posting has been approved, and the batch has been approved. So Sue could now, and I'm just going to log in again as Sue. Apologies about this logging in and off. Just need to close some screens. So Sue can now go and do her payment batch. So in AP, payment batch list, and if we go ahead and, oh, here's an empty one, I can just use that. So if she was to go ahead and do a payment for 1,200, you can see immediately on the vendor number being identified, we see all the transactions relating to this vendor number. But if we were to highlight that one that we've just posted, CW11, we see it's in this list too, but it's also isolated easily up the top here. So at the time of attaching the because we attached it as part of the invoice creation, it's now linked with the vendor number and document number, and we can see it in AP payment entry or a vendor activity. Any transaction that shows us the vendor number and the document number, we can highlight it, and for the vendor number, we can see all their invoices that have been associated with them. So if Sue was to go ahead and apply this one, and what do we need to do? Is that all? And then she could go ahead and post this particular batch, and workflow could happen again around the AP payment batch posting, although we haven't got one configured here. But once this, whether they were printing checks or just printing remittance advices, they would go ahead and do whatever printing. Once this batch was posted, they could then go ahead and create the EFT file. And again, if it's appropriate, you could have a workflow process happening around the creation of the EFT file. So you might have had workflow, to approve that the invoices being entered were okay, but at the time of actually creating the file and sending it to the bank, you might need another person to approve, not from the point of view what you're paying is correct, but from the point of view is, do we have those funds in the bank account right now to do an approvement to approve the funds being transferred today. So that is the first scenario that I wanted to show you. So Stacey, if you wouldn't mind handing back to Natalie to summarize and introduce the second scenario.
Great, there we go. Natalie should be.
Thank you.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Thanks, Stacey. Thanks, Anne, for presenting this scenario. And I understand that there's quite a lot in there and quite a lot of modules. I think the purpose of these scenarios is to give ideas as to things you can do and how seamless all this can operate, rather than a full-blown training on how to configure those modules. So obviously, if you have any questions, I probably didn't say that at the start, but if you have any questions, please put them in. We'll address them all at the end, unless there's a burning question that stops you from following the rest of the scenario. So what we've looked at here is how document management link supports the AP process. We've configured it around entering it around the AP invoice, and we've seen how the documents follow through the record all the way to the AP payment and then in the vendor activity. So this makes this transparency, and instead of having all these files everywhere, so you can now see the documents directly in Sage 300. And we can configure document management link for other AP related screens, like you could file your bank statements against bank services, or the payment batch listing against the payment, if you want to, if you need to file that and completely remove the need for any paper folders. You can also configure document management link for any Sage 300 core modules and third-party screens, and we'll look at a few other examples in the other scenarios. We've also, so OrcaOz has been using EFT processing for a long time with contactless and paperless payments, sending the file up to the bank, and sending the remittance advice by email. And we're finding that this is clearly proving more and more popular these days, where people can't have two check signatories anymore. And users, more and more people are also starting to use this to process direct debit. You can also use EFT processing to create AR receipts and process AR receipts, send the files to the bank, provided you have your direct debit contract with the customers. So in our scenario, the workflow is a new addition to Orca's processes. It used to be a nice to have, and it's turned out that in these days of working remotely, it's a great addition to support the remote team, because it makes sharing that information among team members easier. On the console, people who need to know can see which documents which are waiting for approval, who's supposed to approve. They can also see in the workflow history who has done what. So this transparency and this auditability of the workflow makes everything easier for the remote team. And the final addition, which is the remote access, which allows for quick approval in the cloud. As you've seen, you click on that link, get all the information you need, and can approve without logging to Sage 300, provides one more dimension of choice as to how the users can approve all this information in Sage 300 and share this information. And again, while the focus of that was around AP, similar processes can be applied to other Sage 300 modules. And we have looked at one particular way to do the workflow, but the workflow is based around templates that are configured in Sage 300, so you can tailor it to your own requirements, as well as adapt them as your business needs change, as your auditors' feedback changes, and incorporate that into your change processes in an easy and flexible manner. Now, our second scenario focuses around customer-facing employees using Sage 300 order entry and accounts receivable. And it's all about sharing information across teams using notes, Extender and Extender workflow, and also automating processes using Extender. So Orca has had solid processes to manage their customers for a long time, and they want to deliver great customer service, increase their sales, and at the same time, they want to control their credit risk and their margins. And quick response and collaboration between team members is important. And they used to do a lot of that, in the office, around the water cooler, but now that everyone is working remotely, they've decided to make that process easier to manage without sending lots of emails. And at the moment, well, the pressure is on to generate more business, and Anne has been working the phones very hard and has finally managed to get one of the smaller customers, Leviathan Lightning, to place an unusually large order. That's obviously a good news, but the bad news is that Leo can't pay immediately, and he's also asked for a substantial discount. So Anne will need to enter the order. And while she's doing that, she's going to have information about the credit history, being able to so look at all the information that's available to Anne as she's entering the order. And to enforce the business rules and the business processes that Steve, the finance controller, has implemented, we actually have a script that validates that the sales margin is, or that validates that the sales margin meets the criteria. And if not, you may need to have just a warning, or an approval might be required. We also have some notes that help the users doing the processing, because Anne generally does this processing, but sometimes if she's not around, somebody else does it. And for the processes to be consistent, having these notes that remind people what to do and being able to view the history is particularly useful. In terms of collaborating with other Sage 300 users, we have this ability to view back orders when we're entering OE shipments, and we'll show you how that works. We'll also notice that when the credit limit needs to be approved, email links are sent to the financial controller, who can again approve that, either logging to Sage 300 on the console or on the AR screen, or using the remote link for a quick approval. And more recently, to facilitate the collaboration within the team, OrcaOz has implemented this notification outside of Sage 300 into Microsoft Teams using extended workflow. So when a new order is processed, the workflow then sends a notification. So it's not about an approval, it's about using the workflow to send some alerts to the rest of the team to facilitate this collaboration among team members. And we will demonstrate as part of that scenario using the remote approval to approve AR credit limits. So over to you, Anne. Stacey will ask you once more to make Anne the presenter.
Here we go. Excellent.
Okay, can you see and hear? All good. So this time I'm logged into the same company, but as Anne. And just before I enter my sales order that I've just managed to wrangle out of customer 1240, I just want to show you some of the notifications and alerts and customizations we have around the order entry screen, which help you or help Anne in terms of entering this particular information. So in this first box for document management link, we have chosen to save away the order confirmation that we emailed to the customer, but also the original purchase order from the customer. So at all stages, we've got the original purchase order and we can keep a track of that. In terms of notification or collaboration, and to stop me having to go and run a report to see this, I can see the year-to-date sales for this particular customer. So this is calculated dynamically and shown to me each and every time I go into the order entry screen for whichever customer I'm currently on, at the moment 1200. I also see the customer's current credit limit and who set it last. So the last time the credit limit for this particular customer was set, it was changed from 0 to 45,000 by Steve, and he did that on the 16th of May. So I could go to my AR customer and go and look up what the current credit limit is, but we chose to use Extender to monitor where each and every time the credit limit changes and to update this note. So in the order entry screen, we can see it without clicking too much. And we also see the total quantity sold year to date and the value and a calculated average price of the currently active item. So for my fluorescent desk lamp, we've sold 175 at $83 on average, but for the bulbs, we've sold 188 at $10 on average. And so these calculated notes or extender notes is using the notes module, but extender is doing the calculation and pushing the data in. So you can calculate and show anything anywhere, which is relevant at the time of that particular process. And the final thing we have here is document management link, which is just showing some of the dangerous goods and the QA information that you might need for the particular item that you're on. And maybe this needs to be attached with the shipping details, or maybe there's some sort of QA process that you want to describe there. So I've got Leo from Leviathan online. So I'm going to go ahead and add a new order for him. And I'm now seeing his sales statistics coming through. We've got no documentation yet relating to this order. Year-to-date sales is 15,000. And the last time the credit limit was changed from 40,000 to 48,000 by Steve, and that was yesterday. So we could go ahead and enter this new sales order that Leo has now given us. So I'm just going to give it a PO number and a description. And in adding the item, you know, we've negotiated that he wants 20 of these, and I've negotiated with him a price of $35 instead of $38. And when I go to add the next line, I'm getting in my case, a warning message. We've predetermined that we should not go less than 10% margin, and this is a minus 12% margin. So, I really shouldn't go ahead and do the sale at this. It could have been an error message and not let somebody change the price accordingly. But in my case, it is just a warning. And if we add another line, oops. Sorry. And maybe we need 40 of these. We can see no warning on that. I didn't tinker with the unit price, and our margin is okay on that particular line. But I do notice that the credit limit is 48,000, and I know that this order is going to take them over their credit limit. So before before being able to do the shipment and posting of that, I'm going to need to up their credit limit, which is what I'll do. But before I do that, I'm just going to show you the customization that we do have. And it could have been around the order entry screen, but we did it around the shipment screen, showing us the credit status, the credit, the back orders, and so on. But when you posted that order, you saw that it's we've got an error message now, or a message saying that the order has automatically been put on hold until it's been approved. And the reason for it being is the low margin orders require approval. So I know that a workflow is automatically started. Me as Anne, if I try and take it off hold to go ahead and ship it, I'll get an error message that it needs to be approved first, and workflow is now controlling this particular record. But we do have a communication through into Teams. So in our Teams, we see that this new order here, low margin order created, order 123 for customer 1200, and this purchase order number. I should have used a different purchase order number today, but this is now being posted through to Teams. It could just be alert to say we've got a new order, but in this particular case, it's saying we've got a new order, but also we need to approve that particular transaction too. So before I log on as Steve and approve this, or approve through my email, I'm just going to show you around shipment entry, where we've got some different customizations in place using Extender. Wrong customer number. So when I identify the appropriate customer number, we have got extended notes, which are showing me the back orders. So these are any orders that are not yet complete for customer 1200. And if I was to click on these, it would open up the order that we've just seen. So here's my order 123 that I've just created. It would open up the order entry screen with all the information that we saw earlier. But it's also showing the current aging for this particular customer, broken up into the Dunning brackets that you have set in accounts receivable. And if you click on any one of those buckets, it will show you the transactions that make up that particular aging bucket. So these are the 3 transactions that make up this over 90 days, 31 days, or looking into our current. And we've also chosen to show the credit status, which shows us pending orders, the AR outstanding balance, the total outstanding balance, total credit limit. So yep, it's not looking too bad. But let's say this order was going to be taking them over the credit limit. So Anne's going to ask for an increased credit limit for customer 1240. So the way we have that configured is around the credit limit field. So as Anne, I go to customer 1240, go to the credit limit field, and I see it's currently sitting at 48,000. And let's say I want to make it 55,000. Now, Extender has been configured with a workflow around the credit limit field that the minute or the second, the instance that the credit limit is changed, a workflow is kicked off for the appropriate group or person to approve, and the credit limit gets set back. So you notice it's gone back to 48,000, and Anne is told that the credit limit workflow has started, and the group that it's waiting for is the finance manager. Now, the workflow could be, if it's less, if the request is more than 48,000 or more than 50,000, it goes to the finance manager group. Otherwise, it goes to the approver group. Whatever conditions you need, it needn't be just if changed, go to so-and-so. And in our case, because it is greater than 48,000, the workflow instance will be colored red as an urgent workflow instance. And Sue can go to the workflow console, and although she couldn't go ahead and approve it, you can see that line is actually red because the amount she requested was more than 40,000. Oh no, it wasn't Sue, it was Anne. So, but the amount I requested is more than 40,000, so it's showing as a red line. And Steve, who can sit on his console and auto refresh every minute and just watch the work that's coming in for him to do. Or if he's not in the office, again, he would be receiving it via email. And I must have accidentally closed that email. So if I go to Steve's email on this one, we should see this email coming through. And just like the AP payment batch, there's we can include information in here of the customer's record. So we can see Anne requested it from 48,000 to 55,000. Again, he can link back to the console, or he could link back to the form if he's not in the office. So he's not in the office, so he's going to link onto the form, and he sees that the requested limit is 55,000, and he can approve or reject and put in a comment. But he can also amend the amount. So let's say he was happy with 53, and can go ahead and approve that. So again, this approval on the website needs to be pulled back into the Sage 300. So I'm just going to run that through Process Scheduler logged in as Sue. But it would normally be just running in the background. And Anne, as part of this approval, Anne would receive an email to say that the credit limit has been approved. Oh, I think I ran it as Anne. If I go back to my AR customer, I can see that the credit limit is now being set at 53,000. From the customer record, I can see the last workflow instance history. So I can see that it was submitted by Anne and it was actually approved by admin. That should have been read by Steve. And if I didn't want to view that history, or if somebody else wanted to view the history, they would also see it in the workflow summary. And this shows you all the workflows that have happened in descending date order. And if they look at the detail, they see that same information. Oh, so sorry, that second record was a second workflow instance when admin approved it. So here it is correct. Anne submitted it and Steve approved it and approved the the approved value was the 53,000, requested 55, but approved 53,000. So that is the second scenario I wanted to show you, some additional alerting. And oh, I didn't show you, which I can, is that Extender has also been configured to log this workflow, the credit limit field. So I can see it through the workflow history, but I can also see it through the workflow logging, Extender logging, sorry, not workflow logging. I can see the history of all the changes that are made to the credit limit, and you can see you know, this last the last one was 48,000, now sitting at 53,000, and so on. So you see the full history of the logging of the credit limit, not necessarily who approved it. That would be, or the full history of the multi-level approval. That would be through the workflow log. But this is the final result, who did the final last acceptance. And with that, I'm going to ask Stacey to hand back to Natalie to summarize and introduce our final scenario.
Thank you, Stacey. Thank you, Anne, for this second scenario, where we've looked at the order entry screen and seen all the range of additional information and automations and validations that you can configure around the order entry screen using notes and extender and document management link in terms of viewing documents, extender only in terms of doing some validations like the warning message when there's a low margin, or setting the order on hold automatically because there's a low margin. So again, there's a range of scenarios, and you know, probably not all of them would apply in all you know, for everyone, but all this is about making it flexible to suit your own business process. And a lot of this helps share information across the team. So whether they use Sage 300 or through the notes or through the workflow console or outside of Sage 300 by sending some information into Microsoft Teams, and that can be into other, you know, if you're using Slack instead of Microsoft Teams to facilitate collaboration, because Extender uses Python to do these scripts. Whether if you use another tool, it should be quite easy to configure the workflow to notify into Slack rather than Microsoft Teams. So all this sharing of information and this transparency while you're entering transactions help this diverse, geographically dispersed team support customers more efficiently and more quickly. Some of the elements we looked at were around automation as well. So automation in terms of the ability to print and file an order confirmation or an invoice automatically. So print it, file it into the right folder into document management link for other users to review in the future. Using a process scheduler to automate some reminders and notifications. So we've seen an example of process scheduler polling that website to retrieve the remote access approvals, but process scheduler can also be used in conjunction with custom scripts to send reminders to people of an appointment that might be configured in Service Manager, for example. Or if you have a subscription that's about to expire, you can use our process scheduler to send notification automatically that they are about to expire and they need to do something about it. So all these automation and workflow lets you have more efficient processes, and that supports the remote workers to help them be less overwhelmed. And also it builds the resilience that will make it easier for you to deal with surges of demand and sudden reduction of available staff. So our final scenario really focuses on visibility, efficiency, and automating alerts and reports, and is focusing around the finance teams. So it's been a bit of a crazy start to the year, and the team spends a lot of time in meetings, Zoom meetings, to discuss the impact of the crisis on their business. Some of the items, like the desk lamp, sell very well because everyone is trying to set up their own offices, and others have a lower turnaround. So they also decide that they need more automated notifications to analyze their stock and their sales, instead of always just running a report when they need it. They also have lots of small customers and a handful of big ones. And one of their biggest customers, Great Barrier Beef, which supplies meat to the restaurant industry, has just advised them because of the shutdown they're in serious trouble and they might not be able to pay their latest invoice. So they're worried about all these things and decide they want to automate and have more visibility about what's going on, because they think this is just the tip of the iceberg and they want to monitor everything more closely than usual. So they decide they want some automatic notifications to the finance team and to the sales managers when customers are overdue and over their credit limit, and also when stocks are below their minimum quantity. And for this, they're going to use Process Scheduler and Extender. They also want more targeted exception reports, because in a remote context, managing exceptions is even more important than usual. So they're going to use Process Scheduler and Extender scripts for this, and they're also going to use some Info Explorer cubes to send some information about their AP outstanding invoices, so about some exceptions. They need more visibility on their sales and on their financial position without having to manually run all those reports. And for this, they've configured Report Runner and Process Scheduler to send relevant reports to the finance team and to the sales team. And a lot of this is also supported by Extender, which will help increase the efficiency through the automation of the processes, and also helps enforce the data validation with some validation scripts that you can apply to, as we've seen in the previous example, order entry sales margin, but you can also apply it to entering item information optional fields or entering information about vendors or customers. And it also supports process compliance. So now let's hand over to Anne for our third and final scenario.
Sorry, that mute button is a bit elusive, even though it's bright red and staring me in the face. Okay, so what Natalie's described is we can use Process Scheduler to set up as many schedules as we want to do any number of things that we want. And this particular schedule that I ran last night runs Extender scripts to enforce or to alert people, in our case, of items which are less than their minimum quantity by location, and customers which are out of terms, either over their credit limit or overdue in some way. So you can have any number of alerts or notifications, what are exception criteria in your organization. Process Scheduler can run those scripts every night and send people emails or start workflows depending on how you want that particular process to be handled. So these two were run last night, and they sent emails. And in my warehouse manager's email, we've got a number of emails, but this one here is regarding our customer 1240, who's got an overdue balance, so not necessarily over the credit limit, but overdue. And from here, if you've got Orchid users, you can open the hyperlink and it will take you into the appropriate company. And open up, in this case, from an item balance, from a customer inquiry, we go into the customer inquiry screen to look at their outstanding documents. And we've also had an email showing us all the items that are less than their minimum quantity for a location, and we can open up the item location details. So those are just two types of exceptions that you may want to do, but you might want to be running exceptions on unposted GL batches or GL accounts with certain balances, or GL accounts with balances at month end that you expect to be zero balanced, or any sort of exception to help you running all the reports that you normally run to check. Rather have these alert you only when there's an error condition. So you don't need to remember to run 20 reports. You're just going to get the results of 2 which fail your criteria. And Natalie also mentioned the ability to run and email reports without people needing to manually configure them themselves. So using our module report runner, you can set up a list of crystal reports. And these could be your standard Sage crystal reports, or they could be your own custom crystal reports. And these reports can then be either run on demand, like run right now, or they could be scheduled to run with Process Scheduler. As which we've done, we scheduled the AP vendor aging and the AR aging every night and emailed off to the appropriate people. You can also set up your GL, these are your Excel, your financial reporter, FR reports. You can also set those up, define the parameters the way you want to run them, and those too can be emailed overnight or run on demand when you need to. And then our Process Scheduler schedule needs to just call the daily reports. So we have daily reports, which runs, in our case, in this company, it runs all the reports that have been scheduled to be run by now. And this one's also emailing a Info Explorer cube, which I'll show you. So you don't have to, spend 5 minutes running those reports every day or once a month or once a week. They can be emailed through to you. And here's an example from yesterday where we had the age trial balance emailed through. So here's the AP age trial balance. And as you'd expect, if I open it up, it's going to be the standard, well, it's actually our custom AP aging and AR aging. And also we have, I think in Anne's email, we have our Info Explorer cube. So Info Explorer is our slice and dice utility reporting tool, which allows you to summarize and collate data into a cube where you can then drag and drop your rows and columns. So at this stage, I'm looking at my customers, their total net sales margin and sales rank over these 3 years. But if I wanted to see which items they were buying, I could drag that down. And now I'm seeing the margin per item per customer, or if I wanted to see, what's the margin just at an item level, we could pop customer up here, and now we're seeing the margin per item level. So Info Explorer allows you to report on your information in a dynamic slice and dice way and add your own calculations and traffic light reporting to highlight your exception conditions and or any calculations that you need to do. And this is refreshed, Process Scheduler is refreshing this every night and emailing it every night. So I'm not signed into Sage 300 in order to view this data or drag and drop it. It can be remote, and I'm not using a LAN pack to view this data or to do the analysis that I need to do. And that is the scenario that we were planning to do. So it's showing you how you can use Process Scheduler and Report Runner or Info Explorer to distribute information without having to have people manually run the reports or cubes, and also Process Scheduler in conjunction with Extender to alert people of exceptions in their database. So if you could hand back to Natalie to summarize, Stacey.
Thank you, Anne, for this one scenario on Process Scheduler, Report Runner, and Info Explorer. So what we've looked at is, at this time of increased volatility, having these regular reports on how the business is doing is even more important than ever. You can have Reports combining information from Sage 300 and Sage CRM, for example, using Info Explorer or Crystal Reports and Report Runner, and have Process Scheduler send that automatically to whoever needs it. So one report can have a parameter per salesperson, and each salesperson can receive their own cube with the information, their year-to-date or their month-to-date sales. So Extender can then be used to help manage these, not manage these exceptions, but identify these exceptions and send reminder notifications. With Report Runner, you can run your analytical Crystal reports and your financial reports in an easier to run manner. You can pre-save your parameter, group them by department, so that department 100 can just click one button and have the 3 financial reports that make sense to them. And Extender can help you enforce these business rules. So all this makes the process for the finance team more efficient and makes everything more visible. So we've looked at these various scenarios across different functional areas using Sage 300 and Orchid modules to support remote work. And the focus of the remote mode starts with EFT processing, notes, and document management link, which have an obvious paperless and contactless dimension when it comes to paying vendors. And for OrcaOz, switching from a lot of printed papers to prove that the invoice was due and the invoice had been approved, the invoice had to be paid, to using document management link to file everything electronically has been the first step. But our experience is also that collaboration supported by automation is even more important when teams are split across locations, and having these systems that can adapt to changing requirements and processes are really critical to support all the customer-facing employees with better information using Notes, Document Management Link, and Extender. And the finance management team has relied on these alerts and analysis using Extender, Info Explorer, and Report Runner, and automating that process by using Process Scheduler to make it more efficient. And while OrcaOz was already partially on that journey, they've been pushed to completing some of these transitions. For example, configuring document management link for bank records and bank statements instead of the paper folders, implementing AP invoice approvals workflow, AR customer credit limit approvals, and currently testing the ability to do that with the remote access without logging to Sage 300. And that new piece, this ability to act on email notifications, is particularly relevant at the moment with people working from home or away from their teams. But similar situations will continue to occur when the senior teams that generally approves can travel again locally or overseas to visit clients and suppliers. And this senior team is confident that with Sage 300 and these Orchid modules, provide them with deep and flexible systems that support their working model in a hybrid cloud environment. So to end, I'd just like to say that for any detail of any more detail on the scenarios we've looked at today, please contact Aptus and their teams. And we'd obviously like to thank Stacey and the whole team at Aptus for the opportunity to present Orca scenarios and Orchid products today. And we're now available for any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Natalie, for that. And thank you to the whole team at Orchid for taking the time to present that. The practical examples, the 3 scenarios you've presented today really help, rather than just seeing a product overview, it really helps sort of show what could be done. I know for myself, some takeaways were just how seamless it all was. A client just told me yesterday on the phone that they all went to working really quickly from home, but everything was taking 30% longer. So I think this is the perfect answer to that, where I reckon this actually would streamline even what they were doing in the office faster. So I think that's a really good option. And the other thing what you made me do in presenting this way was think about all the workflow opportunities that I'm starting to get more and more requests from audit teams on, in particular that one we mentioned about the EFT file. This could really help us meet some of those audit requirements that seem to be getting a lot stricter. And loved seeing that it was integrated to Teams. So I was really impressed, and I really thank you for your time. Anybody on the call, have you got any questions? If not, well, thank you. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending today.
Thanks for hosting, Stacey.
Thanks, Stacey. Thanks, everybody else who's on the call.
Thanks for attending. Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.